Loneliness is the new normal, at least in my eyes. Some years ago, in 2020, the beer bug came along, and I have the impression that it made us humans completely forget what it means to have genuine, strong relationships and how to interact with each other. Some years ago, it was natural for people to want to go out and meet, and some decades even more so. People actually find it most exciting for them to go outside and go into bars, into nightclubs, into restaurants or coffee shops or whatever, to go and meet other people because they could essentially meet each other and hang out and feel energized and want to make more relationships and so on. But now this entire thing has completely changed. The entire situation changed. The entire observation changed. Almost the entire human species has changed. More humans are now spending more time behind screens instead with people. And when you are spending your time more on screens rather than relationships with people around you, it's natural for people to forget the thing that you're not doing that much and focus on the screens, all right? And so when people forget how to make relationships, they don't really appear as pleasant to the other people around them, right? That makes sense, because people must have some certain skills. They must be able to have the what we call social skill or soft skills, because they must be able to communicate with the other person, and for that reason exactly, because you need to communicate, there are certain muscles, I think, in your brain that you can exercise for you to be able to communicate with others. And when you do not speak to other people around you is when these muscles are not toughened up, and when they are relaxed, way too relaxed, you cannot really communicate the way you want. And you're not going to be very likable to others around you. So having said that, by the passing of time, until we get to 2025, like we have right now, people do not really enjoy interacting with others anymore, at least at the same rate as some years ago, because people don't really have the social skills anymore for that. And another reason is because people do not really stand each other anymore. People have changed. People would rather do things for themselves rather than go outside and meet people that eventually going to stop talking to. Because relationships were stronger, and when you made, at least some people at least have some very few good friends, if not more good friends, and some not so good friendships, but a lot of people to talk to. And when you don't really have the capacity to make great relationships, and you don't really have trust in people around you, and you find this very exhausting for you, it makes sense for a lot of people to stay alone and don't really want to first bother with other people around, to try a lot for others, because why try when I don't really care? Most people don't really care about each other anymore, at least the same degree. And there are so many other things that people would rather do. And people would rather stay alone and do things on their own. Netflix and chill, read something, meditate or travel, go on a trip by themselves and stay home in general, rather than going outside and trying to make some relationships. The idea behind this is that relationships used to be refreshing, and people used to give you a lot of energy, very good positive vibes when interacting with them. But now that seems to have changed. It seems as if there are some people, almost most people, to be in a way emotional vampires that they make you try a lot to just say some sentences to them and make some sense as to what you're talking about, right? So why bother try about some people that don't really care about you? You believe that you don't really want to invest a lot of time in them, and essentially that the squeeze, that the juice is not worth the squeeze. And there's a much more bigger input in tries and effort rather than the output itself. So people may as well get lonelier today. People, when they are alone, they are much more durable. It's generally a very special trait, I'd say, that some people get very, very good with loneliness in particular, and long hours themselves by themselves. But when we talk about isolation, too much loneliness, essentially this is extremely damaging, because we humans, we are social creatures and we are supposed to talk to each other and we are supposed to make relationships. If we give that up entirely because we deem people as insufferable, as not worth talking to most of people around you, which probably that is the case, but not all of the people. Some people are of course worth your time. When people get isolated, essentially, it is completely damaging, I think I've heard. Because, again, we are humans, and humans are social creatures. When you do not, essentially, socialize, never, or most of your time is not socializing, or you're by yourself, your muscles that were supposed to be working for interacting with other people are less powerful, of course, and this may as well have other effects that I personally am not aware of, but makes sense when people are social. When people are social creatures, after that, it makes sense when people are supposed to be social creatures and they're not socializing, to be damaging, to be damaged by that circumstance. I think I've heard that isolation in prison is one of the worst punishments you can possibly do. It's very harsh, very, very powerful and heavy punishment to leave people in isolation. And here I have, and I believe today that for many countries, for many places in the world, this is the new normal due to technology. And because we have such great technology now and we spend more times on screen time rather than outside or with friends, because we spend so much time with technology and screen time, is that also seems to have some negative effects on us, because really technology is supposed to be working for us. And this is one of the points that I believe that it makes us completely vulnerable as a species, that this may as well have run out of hand, and too much of a good thing may as well turn to a bad. And this is exactly what I mean when essentially we spend too much time on screen time, in front of a screen, instead of with people around us that we are supposed to and we are made to speak to other people more. And the thing is that people, of course, are not going to be always the way we want. They're not going to be perfect, as we say. And the idea is that if you find some people worth hanging out, some real friends, some real partners in a way. And if you manage to find that, you're going to be much more appreciative of that. You're going to have much more gratitude and be much more happy and fulfilled having that relationship, that friendship. That everything compares to that will be almost insignificant. You're not going to care much about the shows that you can watch on Netflix or the books that you can read, although that is debatable actually. You're going to care more about the relationship and what you can share with that relationship more than almost any other monotonous activity by itself. Life is so much more beautiful when you have amazing relationships. And thank God that personally I did not really give up on this. Because really, that is a topic that I think resonates with me. I'm, for the most part, a very lonely person. I'm not necessarily alone. Doesn't mean that I don't know to really like hanging out with others. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And even though I spend a lot of time with me being alone, I probably call that as I'm a lot of time isolated, but I'm almost never lonely. Thank God for me, I have amazing relationships and great family members that gave me a lot of opportunities, and both groups, both my friendships and my family members, I have made mistakes. And I'm so grateful that I was able to grow up essentially and learn from the mistakes that I didn't know they were mistakes until I did them. And so if you manage to find people that endure you for some mistakes that you're gonna do, then it is worth it. It is worth it. Today is easier than ever for you to almost do nothing and be lonelier than ever. But if you manage to find some relationships worth your time, I promise it's not a waste. I promise. And I used to be a person that I was thinking that loneliness is for myself, isolation is for me. And the reason that I didn't really succumb into it, let's say, is because I had some faith. I wasn't very good with people at a very young age, and I got pissed. I got pissed at them. I was furious many times with them because I didn't think that there were many other ways to communicate. I thought that was the only thing that I knew at the time. That was only actually the one way I knew how to speak. That was supposed to be enforced to other people. Okay, now you see that this is wrong when you have grown up, in my case. And that's one thing. The other thing is that, there are so many other people that you're going to meet in your life. Some people are going to be worth your time. Some people will be worth of you just listening to them and try to give them feedback and help them grow in some ways that it's unknown to you yet. But the idea is that not every relationship has to be ideal or perfect, because some people are going to have some flaws regardless. Or put it in another way, humans are not supposed to be identical to each other in order for them to interact or stay loyal or be friends with each other. But rather, if someone is there for you when you need him the most, or when you need him or her the most, and is there for you actually, when they are telling you things, when you are telling them things that are personal to you and that are important to you, they're going to listen. And when things are going wrong, they support you, essentially. And also, if a friend comes and never leaves, that is also a sign in my eyes that he's an actual great person to deal with. So, if you feel alone, and that there are no people out there. I promise you, all you have to do is just be a little bit more open, more durable to other people's, let's say, weaknesses and mistakes in your eyes, and dishonesty, because people are dishonest because they do not trust other people around them. So you may as well start by yourself and be more honest with them, and that may as well draw them to you. And eventually some people are going to arrive or arise. Anyways, some people are going to come in your life and want to stay because they see you as the person that you prove to them that you are worthy of their time, because you essentially were more patient, were more durable, you were more honest in the first place, and you made the move that, hey, you know what, I'm going to decide to trust you because I want some relationships, and I choose you as a person to be my friend, let's say. And if you do that, it's more likely that a person who sees and recognizes these traits are going to accept it and give them back to you, the same traits that you gave them back to that you gave them back. So people are more isolated and lonelier than ever, and technology is part of this, essentially, but also is not really an obstacle in my eyes, because we have social platforms such as Instagram and Facebook and all this stuff, WhatsApp, to communicate. And communicate, that should be a great idea to communicate if the one person is on the other side of Earth, let's say. Or if you could just text a date and say, okay, how are you doing? Can you speak? Yes. When are we going to do? What are we going to do it? When, where, and say some details like that. Then close the app and go out at the time that you mentioned it. So I want to end this video by saying that yes, people are lonelier than ever, are more isolated than ever. People are less tolerable against you. They're more insufferable many times, and really many people are not really worth your time. But we must essentially start over again. We must remember what it is to make relationships and speak to other people with small talk. I personally hated small talks, but I eventually learned to use it to my advantage. It was just a small fragment, let's say a small entrance to the other person, and right after that, it was when I was maneuvering the entire conversation. I was using small talk to then completely open the discussion and put a whole new context inside the conversation and make things much more interesting, and being able to talk about myself in a way that seems relatable to the other person. And I grew that skill by trying to make more friends. It's much more interesting now. I'm much more interested into people than I was some years ago. Because, guess what? Because I learned the skill. And I'm much more excited to learn more about people and about their lives and about the difficulties and what it means to win in their lives. People grew to be very interesting to me because I grew by myself and learned how to express the things that was once hard at me and then they were not. And I love the process. Now I'm saying that I'm enjoying to speak to people for the most part. And I really enjoy seeing people that previously were not so social or were not so, let's say, extroverted, but then I was asking questions about themselves and what everything they did meant for themselves, and actually questions that were based on them and their lives and their circumstances. And little by little, essentially made these people that were open to the questions that I was making to them, that I was doing to them, they were open, and all I had to do was just accept what the other person was saying and take it as essentially as a very precious, vulnerable, very, very easy to break piece of gold, essentially. That is their inner world. Essentially, take it as a piece of gold that is very easy for you to break. And if you treat it like that, essentially, most people are going to open to you, and they probably want to spend more time with you, and they're going to take you seriously, and they're going to appreciate that you listen to them. Personally, I don't think I was really a good communicator until I start not really analyze, but asking questions about the other person that I thought were interesting and how to make it more interesting. And I was then adding more to the details that they were adding. For example, I didn't necessarily ask one question at a time for different topics, one question. Then the question that makes the topic even deeper and even deeper and even deeper. Sorry. For example, being able to, let's say, a person plays tennis, okay? Instead of asking, okay, what do you do? I play tennis, I study this, that, the other. Okay, cool. I do this. And essentially goes to superficial levels of conversation, but you can make a small conversation, a small talk nonetheless. But if you go a little bit harder and essentially say, I study, I play tennis, this, that, the other, pick essentially the subject that you are interested in the most. In my case, it could be tennis, for example, and say, okay, I played tennis. Okay, how come? I mean, who influenced you? This great player on ATP called Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal or Djokovic or whatever. And okay, how did you like this player? I mean, do you look at him for you to want to play his or her tennis? Because what he seems to be doing is very hard. And how good are you? Are you playing a long time? No, just I just started. He was just an inspiration for me to start. And essentially, when you are doing this and asking the deeper question, and then adding some more interesting small details and some, how should I say this, some more commentary on what you say about what they're telling you in a lightly positive way, you elevate the entire thing around you. You are actually happy that you're making this conversation. It's no longer a rigid, monotonous, I say this, you say this, and etc. This just go by itself. It's just a small piece of information about the other person, and then grows into something beautiful and gorgeous that you yourselves both built, because you were giving the directions with the questions, and the other person was giving you even more details with their answers. And essentially, you were both essentially keep working on this, and it was, wow, a majestic, let's say, piece of art. That was our conversation that lasted half an hour, and I thought there were 5 minutes or something like that. So, loneliness to me indeed seems to be the new normal, but I really think that it is exciting in a way. Because really, that can be a situation that you can remember as a person that didn't know how to speak, and then learn how to speak, and then being able to do whatever you want between those two things. And so this is going to be my video for today. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you try to make more friends and more relationships, and I'm going to see you next time. Thank you so much for your time.